Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. Today we are going to be taking a look at the Shanghai Dragons 2020 roster. Shanghai Dragons finished the 2019 season 11th overall with a 13-15 record with a -10 differential. Very weak stage 4, kind of changed the course of the season as they ended up basically dipping pretty low and ending up as one of the bottom 2 in the play-in tournament. Seeding wise, though, they were able to beat the number 10 seeded Philadelphia Fusion in the play-in tournament. But they were also the stage 3 champions. They went into stage 3 playoffs as the number 8 seed. They beat NYXL, who was the number 1 overall. They beat the Vancouver Titans, who were number 2 overall. They beat the San Francisco Shock, who I believe were number 4 overall. So they had a very good run. They beat the top 3 teams in the league by record. By the end of the season. So this is a team that had shown a lot of promise going into stage 4, but then with roll lock and roll Q, and this team basically could not run their strength, which was, for all intents and purposes, triple DPS. Now they're different, and we see how this team has changed. So let's look over their roster. Let's start with the players that are no longer with this team. So we start with Youngjin, who has retired. He was their flex DPS specialist. Gamsu, who was not under contract going into the 2020 season. He decided to leave and join the Dallas Fuel. And Coma, who they released. They also got rid of their head coach, Blue Haas, back in September. So they had, and Levi as well, one of their assistant coaches. So they have a new coaching staff as well. And their head coach is Moon, formerly of the LA Valiant. And then they have Creed, Dongsu, and Jay Feel as their assistant coaches. I don't always talk about the coaches. I talk about the coaches when I think it's relevant to the team as a whole. Moon, of course, was the head coach for the LA Valiant in the 2018 season, where he led them to a Stage 4 title, as well as the second best record in the entire Overwatch League in 2018. But in 2019, he was the coach in Stage 1 for this team. They were 0-7. He made a lot of questionable coaching decisions in terms of who he had playing and when. And it was after he left that the Valiant started playing better. Now, part of what I think the problem with that was I think he was trying to put Kuki somewhere on the team because I think Kuki's a very good leader. But Custa was the leader for that team, and I think without Custa in the roster, you had some problems there. So I expect it to be a little different with the Shanghai Dragons. We saw how good he was in 2018, but I would be a little skeptical just because of how well the Shanghai Dragons did for the first 3 stages of the season, and the fact that they almost made the playoffs. I'd be a little skeptical putting the Shanghai Dragons as a really dominant team with their new coaching staff. But we'll see what happens. I think they'll be just fine, though, because we saw enough from especially Dongsu and Jayfield to see how they have been. So let's take a look at their roster, and let's start with their DPS players, because they have a good number of them. They have Dia on a 2-way contract, the only player to still be on this team from the original Shanghai Dragons roster, from when the team was first created. He's the only Chinese player left on this roster. He's on a 2-way contract, so we won't see much of him, most likely, but he is there, and he is someone who they could use every so often. He'd probably more likely play in games when they're in Shanghai. That's my guess, is they're keeping him mainly to be the Chinese player on this team. They need someone to be the Chinese player, to be the guy who kind of speaks and connects the community to the rest of the team. So that's my guess for what he's here for. DM and Ding, of course, returning. And they add Fleta, of course, formerly of the Seoul Dynasty, and Lip, who Lip is, of course, coming up from Contenders. He is coming from Blossom. I want to start with Lip because he is interesting. Lip's Sombra, Widowmaker, mainly type player. Those are the heroes he plays the most of, and it's weird to me that that's his hero pool. That we see, at least like for the most part, that's what he plays more than anything else. So I'm curious to see how the team forms and if Lip really gets a lot of playtime. What I want to mention, I didn't mention this with Chengdu Hunters though. The Shanghai Dragons actually hosted an invitational, the Shanghai Masters Invitational, which was just recently. It was, I believe, it was the beginning. It was December 1st. All 4 of the Chinese Overwatch League teams were there. Shanghai Dragons were the victors. They beat the Hangzhou Spark. The Chengdu Hunters beat the Guangzhou Charge, and then the Dragons beat the Chengdu Hunters 4-0. Obviously, it's way too early to take a lot out of that. I just want to mention that they did, as a team, play a little bit and do that. But Lip obviously comes from Blossom. An interesting signing. Sombra, Widowmaker are his best 2 heroes. I don't see him getting a lot of playtime. The only thing that I really would see of him is if they need a Pharah and a Sombra in the same composition, because we know that their main Sombra player is Ding, and Ding is a very good Sombra, one of the best Sombras in the league. And DM is a really good Widowmaker player, so I'd expect Lip's role mainly to be they need a Sombra and a Pharah, and they'll bring him in. And then that means they can also play some Widowmaker as well. But you're not going to put him in over DM on Widowmaker. That would just be crazy, because he's really good at Widowmaker. So you wouldn't replace DM at all. Ding obviously is going to be there mainly for your Pharah. He also is going to probably be their Doomfist. Their Reaper player will likely be Fleta, if that's where we see the meta going again. But Fleta can play anything, and I think having Fleta on this team is really good. You can put Fleta with anybody on this roster, and he's going to be really good. I'm a little surprised Fleta is on this roster, not on the Soul Dynasty, because I think if you had Fleta Prophet, it would have been a really great DPS lineup, but the Soul Dynasty decided to move on from him and trade him over to the Soul Dynasty. But I think, or the Shanghai Dragons. But he adds a lot of flexibility to this roster, because that was one of the problems I think this team had when we look at them late in the season. They were very they were very specialized. Their players didn't have a very wide hero pool, right? DM was going to play your Widowmaker. He was going to play your Hanzo. He was playing your McCree. A little bit of Tracer. That was about it. Ding was going to play Pharah. Was going to play Sombra. That was about it. And then you had... why am I drawing a blank? Young Jin, who was going to play your Doomfist pretty much every time, right? They didn't have a very diverse hero pool, and there was not a lot of overlap. Not only was not a lot of overlap, there were heroes that didn't really play at a super high level. So Fleta adds a lot of flexibility. Lip adds some more flexibility in there as well. I'd expect DM, Ding, Fleta to be the main 3. I expect them to play the most part. They're their best 3 DPS players, in my opinion. I think they will get the most playtime because of that. That is just my expectation, because I think that when you look at this team and you look at who they have, DM and Ding were 2 of the best DPS players last season. I think Ding should have been an MVP candidate last season. I think he was a snub. He was snubbed. I think he should have been an MVP candidate just based on how impactful he was for the Dragons. So I think this DPS lineup's really good, possibly the best one in the league. Good. It's very good, and I think they are going to be a really difficult DPS lineup to kind of break through and beat. Moving on to the tank line. This team has 3 flex tanks and 1 main tank. Their 1 main tank is Stand 1, who is coming from Gladiators Legion, formerly played with Team Envy, NRG Esports, Foxes. So he is an interesting signing. I think he is not the best main tank they could have signed. He's not bad. I think that he's definitely not an upgrade over Gamsu, but he's a good player. So I think he is an interesting signing, and I think he'll have to be one of the parts of this roster that performs really well, I think, for this team to have a lot of success, mainly because when you look at Gamsu and the the role that he had, that Stand One has some pretty big shoes to fill, but we will see how that happens, because I think Stand One is really going to be the part really to look at, and he's really kind of where the team has to see how they perform, because he's going to be their weakest link, in my opinion, right now. But if Stand One is your weakest link, I think this team's going to be pretty good. So I don't have an issue, a really big issue, but he's obviously the player to watch out for, and how well he performs. But he's able to play the main tank heroes they will need. He's got a good Reinhardt, got a good Winston, got a good Orisa. There's not really one that's like super noticeably bad. Interesting that he was signed when a player like Panker is still not necessarily. Panker may have been signed. I know there was a point in time where he hadn't been. So it's interesting because I think that, Panker's not on a team at the moment. He's on any team at the moment. So it's interesting that they didn't sign Panker, but it is what it is. Stand One, a solid tank. He's going to be their weakest link, I think, on this roster going forward. We'll see where he goes, but I'm not too worried about it. The interesting signing is their flex tank position, because that was their weakest spot last season. And I think the reason why they started struggling late in the season was because they didn't have a very strong flex tank. Geggery, very popular character. Everybody loves Geggery. She was not the strongest flex tank player in the league. Then they bring in Envy, and Envy wasn't really much better. Envy is an interesting player. He's really just kind of gone everywhere. He didn't really perform all that well. So you kind of go, wasn't really the best performance from him. So they bring in Void, formerly, of course, of the LA Gladiators. Last season, Void was one of the top flex tanks in the league. Even though he wasn't really the most flashy player, he's a very good player. He showed a lot of very good play throughout the season. He's been a solid player for 2 straight seasons. I think he is definitely an upgrade over Envy and Geggery. He is going to have a big impact on this team. I think that he is the big signing that they made this offseason, and they acquired Fleta. And I think Void is the more important player to this team, just because they had a good damage lineup, and they could have survived with just the 3 that they would have had by bringing in Lip. But I think Void is just that much better than Geggery and Envy, that he is going to be one of the most important players on this team going forward. And I think without him, this team would not look nearly as good as they do going into the next season. So I think adding Void is really big. I'm sure Envy and Geggery will have some playtime here and there, but I think their biggest thing really was adding Void. I think that was the signing they had to make, and they made it. Finally, they have their support lineup, which rounds out their 12-player roster. They have on main support, surprisingly, 1 player, and that is Lee J. Gon, who comes from Runaway. He was very, very good in contenders with Runaway over the past year. There is no reason to question him. He is one of the best signings, I think, coming out of contenders right now. I think he will have a major impact on this team. Of course, Como was let go, so Lee Jae-gon is their support player. He is their guy that they're going to roll with. Interesting to me that they kept Luffy over Koma, when late in the season we didn't see a lot of Luffy, as we saw them playing Izayaki, who is the player that I would expect them to run alongside Lee Jae-gon. I think this is a very solid support lineup as well. I don't really see a hole on this roster, to be completely honest with you. I don't see a spot on this roster where I think the Shanghai Dragons look bad. So I really think this is a really good roster. Izayaki, very promising player, was very up and down with the Valiant. Of course, we saw him get replaced by Kariv late in the season, kind of down the stretch. But this is a very good team, I think. The support lineup's very good. This whole team is very good. I think when you look at the teams coming out of China, the 4 teams playing in China. Oh, you know what? I'll expand it. I'll just say the entire Pacific East division. When you have Seoul, Shanghai, Hangzhou, Chengdu, and Guangzhou. The only team I've touched upon so far is Chengdu. I think this team looks like they might be the best team right now coming out of that division. Seoul's made some moves to get better. Hangzhou, of course, was still very good last season. They still look very good going into next season. But I really like what Shanghai has done to improve their roster. They added the 2 most important pieces, I think, which were Fleta and Void to really bring this roster up. They have the downgrade at main tank, yes, but I don't think that's going to be a huge problem. And I think bringing in Lee Jae-gon is a very good addition. Wasn't a needed addition, but it's the kind of thing where you're not going to criticize a team for signing a player who's better than what they already had. So I think their starting 6, actually giving them a starting 6 is kind of disingenuous, but we're definitely going to be seeing Stand 1 Void, Lee Jae-gon, Izayaki, and then we'll have, depending on the map, DM, Ding, or Fleta. And, some combination of those 2 of those 3. I really like this roster. I think it's a really good roster. I genuinely think they are a title contender just looking at this roster right here, right now. There's definitely some weird parts to it. There's definitely some questions I have with this roster, with Stand 1 and with Izayaki and Lee Jae-gon. How are they going to mesh together? But I really like what this roster is. I think this is going to be one of the best rosters in the league going into next season. I'm 100% on board with everything this team has, and I'm interested to see how they play going forward. But I would love to hear what you all think about this team, and if you think they are as good as I think they are, if you think there's a problem with them. I think definitely the new additions are helpful, but losing Gamsu I think could be a problem. Big question mark with the new coaching staff that we'll have to see figured out. But overall, I think this is a very good team. This is a team that I feel very confident in their ability to do, and I think they are a team that will be one of the top teams in the league. I just think that they have that much talent on this team. I think they are that good. Just based on everything that we've seen, I really like what they have done. And I'm excited to see what this team brings come the start of the season. And of course, they're going to be hosting one of the first homestands. They host a homestand Valentine's Day weekend. So we'll get to see them at home for their first matches. So that'll be really exciting. So I'm excited to see that. But that is everything that I have for you today. If you enjoyed, consider liking and subscribing. But that is everything I have. So I'm going to get out of here. Thank you once again. And I will see you all in the next video. Bye-bye.